Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth virtual event of the 6th Unbound Book Festival. My name is Gabe Freed, and I'm on the programming committee for Unbound and the director of poetry programming. Tonight, we are so excited to welcome three extraordinary poets, Claire Wahmanholm, Jay Deshpande, and Jenny Z. As you may know, Unbound has always been completely free to attend, and this wouldn't be possible without the generosity of the hundreds and hundreds of people who have supported us financially over the years. On behalf of everyone who volunteers for Unbound and everyone who attends these events, we're so grateful to each and every one of you who has been kind enough to give. If you'd like to help us out, please go to the website, unboundbookfestival.com, and click on the donate button on the homepage. We're a registered nonprofit and are completely run by volunteers, so everything we receive goes directly into putting on these events. Thank you. Support comes too from the City of Columbia, Missouri, specifically the Office of Cultural Affairs and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. KBIA and Como Magazine are our media sponsors. A full list of our sponsors and supporters is available on our website. Particular thanks this evening go out to tonight's event sponsor, Skylark Bookshop. As some of you may have heard me say before, we are very, very lucky to have such a magical independent bookstore here in Columbia, Missouri. If you haven't already, please do take a moment after the reading to review the whole schedule, all 3 months of it, and plan to attend as many events as you'd like. We'd love to see you. While we don't have a Q&A following our poetry readings, we do encourage you to use the public chat to hoot and holler and snap and clap as you enjoy tonight's readers. It's always great fun to see what moments the audience really relishes. Our first reader tonight is Claire Wahmanholm. Helping to select poets for Unbound over the past 6 years, there are always those who leap to mind immediately, poets we've admired for years. And including those poets is very special and exciting. But really just as special are the poets we discover for ourselves in the real time of planning the festival, whom we come across in our current wanderings as readers. And this year, for me, Claire Wahmanholm is that poet, one whose poems I've only come to know deeply in recent months. Like so much of my favorite writing, Claire's poems tell us uncanny stories and secrets that maybe we've always suspected deep down were true. They often seem to me like mysterious and musical fairy tales or rituals or legends, wise, I would say benevolent, but also definitely unbowdlerized. We can't unknow what she teaches us in her poems, and there is often some implicit element of danger. She recounts, and I'm quoting here, children in the wilderness, in the cornworks and pasturage, and among young birches thin as rib bones. And in another poem, she describes, quote, a human shape waiting for me in the middle of a road I am not on. Claire is the author of a chapbook called Night Vision and a full-length book of poems, Wilder, which won the 2018 Lindquist and Vennum Prize for Poetry, the Society of Midland Authors Award for Poetry, and was a finalist for the 2019 Book Award. She lives in the Twin Cities, and we are thrilled to welcome her to Unbound this evening. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Is the volume okay? After all my various struggles, I've not done a lot of pandemic poetry readings, so hopefully this will all be fine, and we can pretend like I've been doing this my whole life. Thanks so much to Unbound for putting this together and inviting me to be a part of it. And Gabe, that was a really lovely intro. Benevolent is a word that I would not have used myself to describe my work, but I'm happy to have it in mind. I'm really grateful to be sharing a screen with Jay and Jenny tonight. This is really lovely. And this reading is also coming at a fun time because I've recently finished book 3, actually, which is tentatively called Meltwater, and which is forthcoming from Milkweed in 2023, which I'm very excited about. So I'll be reading a couple poems kind of toward the end from the new book. And so when I was thinking about how to kind of distribute what I read tonight across the 3 books I have, I was thinking like maybe like what are the through lines, or kind of what are the preoccupations that come up again and again. And so I thought I'd do kind of a fun for me at least, which was try to find words that appeared across the 3 books and maybe like just read from those poems. And it's some of the words are too easy, like grief appears like 70 times in each book, so like that's, you're not doing that. Or like darkness, like I'm a poet, so that's just cheating. So it had to be a unique enough word that it didn't have like a million hits, but it couldn't be too weird. So we're doing future. Future is the theme of my poems tonight. So I'm going to read a future poem from Wilder, a future poem from Redmouth, which is my second collection, which came out in 2019 from Tinderbox Editions. And then I'll do a couple at the end from Meltwater. So we'll get started with the future poem from Wilder is called, and I'm sorry, I didn't tell Gabe ahead of time that it's pronounced Wilder, but it is, because I'm a jackass, it's Wilder as in bewilder. There's no reason anyone should know that it's not Wilder, but it's Wilder. It's called State of Emergency. And when I was working with Mary Austin Speaker to design the cover of this book, State of Emergency was the poem that I had in mind to like tonally match with the cover. So here it is, State of Emergency. Of the moon and its red bulb, its red bell, its fleshy alarm that beats in your ears like the pulse of a body suddenly surfacing out of the sky. No, it is falling from the sky and entering the water. No, it is falling out of the water which is facing the sky. Every body of water is a soft platter. Every body is soft matter that becomes even softer when it lands. Beneath a red moon, every surface sprouts a chalk outline. Every chalk outline breaks into a flock of birds that rises above the hot asphalt like steam. Impossible to breathe in it. Impossible to look at a surface and not see a body falling out of the future and softening itself upon it. State of suspense. State of holding your breath until your vision blackens and bends. So that's like the one little poem that you get from Wilder. There's another, Wilder has a sequence of like 9 erasures of Carl Sagan's Cosmos kind of embedded in it. And one of those erasures also has future in it. But it's hard to read erasures. So I thought, let's just skip that one. So here's the future one that I'll read from Redmouth. It's called Children Arrive in the Land I Thought I Was Alone In. And this is like by happenstance, one of the ones that Gabe sort of spoke from in his introduction. Amazing. Children arrive in the land I thought I was alone in. One dusk, I hear them out in the fields, their voices skittering through the pasturage like mice or the shadows of hawks. At dawn, I see the children flashing among the stands of young birches, their arms thin as rib bones, their faces wind reckless. How did they arrive in this nettled world where an even rougher wind scrapes a rough sky redder every dusk? However they came, they soon become bee-stung and brave. They howl like foxes wild at the mouth with their own pitch. The wind sends curtains of pollen billowing across their lips, sends summer slipping away in a warble of vowels. The future moans like flies from an unseen source, worse for its furry vagueness. I don't tell the children this. I let them find the body and poke it with their sticks. When they startle real foxes from their dens and bend toward their redness, I let them. I do not tell them how sharp and how deep the future can come. I do not say how lonesome. So those are, oh, I just like, Gabe popped up and I was surprised. So it's one from Wilder, one from Redmouth. And then there are like too many future poems from Meltwater to actually read them all. The book is a lot about children. I have 2 small children. Like once I had children, the future was all I ever thought about, like both in terms of them as like individual people with futures, but also in terms of the world they were going to grow up to inhabit. So this has been like a major source of anxiety for me. So this next poem is called Daughter. I haven't written many poems about the pandemic, but this is one of them. And I also love epigraphs. Sorry, I know some people like feel a way about them, but I love them. And the epigraph of daughter comes from The Tempest, where Prospero and his daughter Miranda have been exiled on this island for, he thinks, like as long as she can remember. I think it's like 12 years. But it turns out that she does have memories from before their exile, which surprises him. And he says to her, "But how is it that this lives in thy mind? What seest thou else in the dark backward and abysm of time? So much I would not have you remember. For one whole season, we were wax-sealed cells, swelled with our own astringent honey. We were low-lying islands, losing sand. We watched the sky turn page after blue page, bright as canaries' wings, window pane clear. In our honeycombs recirculated air, you traced numbers even as they fell from meaning's shelf and splayed in numb, shapeless jumbles around us. Nothing added up. How many bodies was a lot? How far beyond too many did the numbers go? Time left and re-entered our lungs. After was a game we'd lost the rules for. You cast a wobbly crayon net around your palm, and I marked the date, a violet anchor. On the next page, you drew a piecemeal sheep, tail, legs, hooves, ears, eyes, wool, teeth, tongue, moving from left to right like wind across a map, body parts loose as seeds. We will not know until later if this catastrophe has laid eggs in your mind, and if it did, we cannot guess what will hatch from those shells, how many teeth, how many heads, what eyes. There are anesthetics that render memory more like a dream than an assurance, a milky meadow of whole sheep tumbling through the veins. There, nothing had ever changed. No sudden rift had ever gaped beneath the clover. The air had never killed someone who breathed it for too long. The world is sometimes brave and sometimes new, but the which and the when are not of our choosing. For you, I want there to be things worthy of reliving, even as I wait for them to happen. The touch of something other than the sun on your skin, the moment when the future runs sweet and shareable as honey. And this next one is it's just called The Future. Like once I realized I was obsessed with the future, I stopped getting creative. Like you get what you get. It's called The Future. Every poem is called The Future. And this poem comes out of research I was doing on like animal mothers and their children, which I do not recommend. Don't do that research. But this one is about eider ducks specifically. And eider feathers are often what you fill like pillows with, right? Super soft feathers. The future. The body is lined with it, like a nest. Like the down, the eider plucks from her breast until her nest is a gray mist, weighed down by 5 sea-green eggs. At the end of each season, only one duckling will survive to fly away. This is an average. On any given day, all of the eggs may hatch, all of the hatchlings may freeze. The gulls may cruise in rings above the nesting colonies, the polar bear may not surge ashore. The female eider can lay eggs for 18 years, more or less. Without wanting to, I do the math. She will lose 72 chicks before she dies. Those numbers, traded against her own long years by nature's calm calculus. There is only so much life to go around. It isn't like a flame whose belief in itself is enough to burn a forest down. Instead, we have been given one bolt of cloth to be shared. The choice is in how you shear it. I say choice, but of course it's not. It's a vast organic machine running like static behind everything. The gene doesn't want anything, doesn't exist except by cosmic mistake. Accident means to move toward a fall. And so they fall and fall through time, carelessly, like a carnival ride whose switch is stuck in the on position. I would like to die before losing any children. In fact, there is no reason for me to be alive anymore. Having borne my code into the future, even if only by another lifetime, I could not matter less. Eider ducklings enter the water motherless, will dive for mussels on their own just one day after hatching. If they escape starvation, the gulls, the cold, when will the dying begin? When do the cells start to multiply or weaken? The eider's scientific name is Somateria mollissima, the softest body. My own is already less terra firma and more open water, more unmooring, more losing. I may have already begun to rupture invisibly. My cells may have already begun their unwinding. Time picks us up, then sets us down a little further on, pulses through us like a wave. Sometimes it seems as if the eggs survive just to keep the nest from blowing away. I have stayed even though it makes me pray to worse things than freezing wind or gulls. I am mostly glad we are not wild animals. I am mostly glad about most things, even the future, even though I know that broken shells may float on its waters. I need to think that the eider doesn't grieve the breaking. And lest you think I'm a super bummer at parties, which you would be wrong. I'm actually pretty fun. I'll end on the most uplifting one, the most benevolent one, maybe. And this is called, oh, I've never read this one out loud. I don't know what to call this. The title is just a colon. And actually, when I've saved it in Word, because you can't save a doc with like special characters, the document name is just another poem about the future, seriously. So this, I'll say it's this, colon. Future, to become another thing, to feel the air ring with songless, sudden weight. Water will soften every saltless land. Inside the silk gland, the spider's unspun gossamer sits liquidly like early summer. Church bells kneel into time. Bird bones melt beneath the lime trees. Skin moves towards itself across a sore. Half a night away, a war is renamed into another war. Half of my cells become yours. Your name becomes a better universe. That's it. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. That's like a little virtual reading pandemic joke. I can't see you at all. I have no idea what the audience is doing, but neat. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'm now never going to pronounce Wilder the correct way again, but that's okay. It was so lovely to hear you read after having enjoyed your poems on the page for these months. Next, we have the pleasure of hearing poems from J. Deshpande, a poet and human that I admire tremendously. Like me, Jay adores and has written about the singer-trumpeter Chet Baker, and like Baker's music, Jay's poems are sumptuous, clear, and tender, a tenderness in both senses of the word that comes from being fully and wholeheartedly present in the world. One of Jay's Chet Baker poems begins, "When two people love each other, it's a sign there are parts of the map we save for silence." Jay's poems have, if not a silence, then a reverence for our private and holy moments, especially the ones that are unexpected or unplanned. He writes, "I think of sea glass, its awful yearning, how everything gets beveled to abstraction before becoming beautiful." Jay is the author of a full-length collection, Love the Stranger, named a top debut by Poets and Writers magazine in 2015. He is also the author of 2 chapbooks, including the recently published The Umbrian Sonnets. Please join me in welcoming Jay Deshpande.
Thanks so much, Gabe. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Unbound. Thank you, Skylark. Thank you, Claire. That was a beautiful reading and just really exciting to hear you and across the range of the manuscripts. I'm so excited to be here with you and with Jenny and with all of you on these various modes and platforms. It's a nice moment to be together, not only because of all of the isolation that we're having, but you might be able to tell from behind me that I'm in the process of moving out of my apartment. So this is sort of the one still point in the turning world this week to get to be with all of you. I'm going to read a selection of poems that are newer work and mostly focused on the Umbrian Sonnets, which came out last month. But I'm going to start with just a couple pieces. This is called Path. When I wake up with you, I want to be correct. I want to be the last house on fire in a town being swallowed by the sea. Listen to it. Goodbye, neighbor. Goodbye, neighbor. A guitar string late in the clarity of far away. Who would believe me when I say, asleep, I knew precisely where everything touched everything. But I did, and it was the sun. It was a gift until it wasn't. One of the lovely things about being here tonight is that my friendship with Gabe, as well as with Jenny, goes back to a time where we were on a fellowship at Civitella Ranieri in Italy, in Umbria, which is what led to the generation of this chapbook of the Umbrian Sonnets, with a little glare on the screen, but hopefully you can see it there. And I've been thinking a lot about the relationship between my home here in California and the time I spent there in Italy, and trying to square different stories and images from these different moments in life together. So this is a poem that tries to do that, connecting a place in Umbria, Gubbio, and a tradition there to the present and maybe the future. I think this might tie to some of the themes that Claire is speaking to as well. This poem's called Wanting a Child. Here in California, we can drive through any landscape, field, flower, forest, all in reach at sunset, affording not to notice the exhaust left in our stead. A day trip takes us to the edge of the continent, leaning out over some precipice, looking back. We are home by dinner, the house soft color, where our bodies move through dark's thin language and something calls urgently from after. Some days I don't know if it's fair of me, built as I am, a man, unable to carry every inch of an idea into the future. In Gubbio, each spring brings the same pageant. Up hills of the medieval town, up streets obscured by screaming crowds, 3 teams of men in bright blouses tumble upward with their tribute. Up switchbacks, up stone roads smoothed by centuries' tradition. In the middle of May, they come this way, to carry the wooden paraphrase of candles on their sweating, rainbowed shoulders. Each 4 meters tall, an emblem of a patron saint. The same one wins each year. All Umbria comes to watch this alias of a race. But the exertions are real. The men intent, although they know what little their ardor comes to. They pass the title on through blood. Each time, the cheers subside when they touch the basilica. They set the good things down. What honor it must be to carry something so beyond you up into the sky, up toward the face of God. What work your faith must take. What flagrancy. So I'm now going to turn to the chapbook. The project behind the Umbrian Sonnets was obviously exploring what I could do in the sonnet form and thinking about how chaining sonnets together could also be a space for a kind of argument to see how ideas could be developed and what might happen in that space. So I found myself at this castle in Umbria having this experience of wanting to write and think about beauty and wonder. But this was also in summer of 2018, and I found myself trying to square that reality with what was happening back home, and specifically the family separation policy at the US-Mexico border, and trying to think about ideas about ethics and distance and home and responsibility. And so that ended up sort of pushing me through this sequence of poems. I'm going to read just a selection of them, but they're in order. So hopefully it'll give some sense for where the poems are going. Number 2. The daylight here has history inside it. It dilates. It looks in cracked embrasures, evaluating dust. It's old enough to wonder why I pause from writing poems to watch sun slowly fill the garden. Chalk marks at fist height punctuate the walls under windows where one recent tenant scored and mapped the path he'd take to boulder the circumference. With these placements, his feet would always hover a meter above the earth, our small, forgotten work. Pheasant, who scuttled my path one morning, then flew to claim the same cypress he'd started from, his tail long and literate against the sky. Number 5. Cypress choked in ivy, nature's cruelties. Sure, you look close at those. or at dead hatchlings fallen from the eaves, matted fur and dun, and shut eyes bulged with maggots. Save your breath. Deep attention goes wrong when it forgets what's out of sight. Back home, late empire dreams of walls, demeans women, holds black men down. Purest cruelty. Children too young to speak are being taken from their parents. Still, your impulse is to detail the proximal, where moral action stays simple, just well described. Ivy leaf in the dirt, punctured to a stencil of itself. Go ahead. Say, who dropped this to the air, teacher that you are? Number 8. 4 full weeks living in the dream before I walk into actual sunflowers. Turn between farmhouses and stop, surrounded. Bright field fills my sight. Hillside of small dawns. Yellow with a purpose and in legion. Sometimes one color is enough to wake the whole column of the body. That strange feeling, like 1,000 children facing me. What does one do with a vision? Its lesson, a landscape composed of small attentions. This diligence of light cuts into me. I stay looking for a long time. Walking back, I hunt for proper words. In the air, somewhere nearby, a rooster drinks its name. 11. At dinner, beneath the florid vines, we watch the castle settle into darkness. The birds, still swooping, anesthetize themselves into a hum. The talk is of music, mutual friends back home, or work we saw in galleries. When all the plates are cleared, we pour digestives into small glasses the width of a tongue. Each of us must choose. Larino for visions, Finocchio digestion, Melograno for the heart. Our talk continues half an hour longer until we can't see faces, each conversant with the dark. We all say buonanotte, stumble homeward to look at what we've done. 15. And why beauty? Why build a life around the leaving that sustains? Is it ethical? Not long ago, we drove above the sea in Mallorca. Wine, heat, every pleasure we drank like swallows at the pool at dusk. I looked up and found my love right there gathering beauty. How it encircles her, arrests me, who hungers so for beauty. Something eased. But the world does not end there. The day goes on, and beauty, like sun glare on the sea, calls us to look past it, rack focus. The harbor town's back broken by tourists. Carrion's fur and murk along the highway. The carbon fog like foil, 30 feet above. And I'm going to conclude with just one sonnet, not from the book, a separate kind of sonnet in another kind of voice. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Unbound. This is called Sonnet Written Walking Under the Mess Some Magnolia Made. Even with my nose up here at 6 foot something, I know the color brown is sweet. This putrescence embarrasses no one. The petals, treacly vessels jangling overhead yesterday have taken a hint and gone down into the real grit of things. Where better than the sidewalk to speak achingly? I could go on. I'd say love makes us amenable to certain minor, probable disasters. But what I mean by love is spring, overeager and almost enough to make me wake up and like the insides of my mouth a little more. The petals talking vivid now. They say, finish your work and come back to us. We know which of our atoms were once in you, you who are a flower machine, who are a blossom for meaning, the scent of sweeter cenders, the slobberiest part of the kiss. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Jay, thank you so much, and thank you on a day that was 10 degrees when I woke up in the Midwest for taking me back to summer in Umbria for just a spell. That was wonderful. And thank you to all three of our wonderful readers. This was an astonishing 50 minutes of poetry. Thanks also again to this evening's sponsor, Skylark Bookshop. If you're in Columbia or if you're online on Skylark's website, you can pick up copies of these authors' books. I happen to know that they're in stock at Skylark as we speak. And Unbound will resume next Thursday with a panel entitled Times Like These, a user's guide featuring authors Catherine May and Marley Grace, who have written deeply thoughtful books on staying grounded in a chaotic world. We hope to see you then. Good night, everyone.